Today, the judge enforcing Alberta's pandemic lockdown laws sentenced Pastor Artur Pawlowski. His crime? No crime, actually. He simply opened his church during the lockdown. In a bizarre 40-minute rant today, Justice Adam Germain ordered that for the next 18 months, whenever Pastor Artur talks about lockdowns, the pandemic, or vaccines, in tweets, in speeches, in media interviews, he must immediately repudiate himself and give the official government view condemning himself after he gives his own views. He must argue against himself. He must condemn himself or go back to jail. It's compelled speech, like a Maoist struggle session in communist China. You have to say what the government tells you to say. This is unheard of in Canadian law. Even convicted murderers cannot be ordered to apologize for their crimes. And anyway, such a forced apology would be meaningless. But a convicted pastor must now violate his own conscience and repeat an angry judge's talking points or face prison. And that's the whole point of it. This judge wants Pastor Artur to submit, to acknowledge the government as his master. And if he can't convince Pastor Artur of this voluntarily, he'll just force him to say it with a court order. It's like forcing him to kneel, which the police have already done. The judge also hit Pastor Artur with $42,000 in fines and another $10,000 for his brother David. What a disgrace this judge is, especially to Alberta, whose official motto is strong and free. And that's not all. In his 40-minute rant, the judge repeatedly criticized Pastor Artur for talking about civil liberties to the media. He specifically mentioned Pastor Arthur's appearance on Fox News. But what does that have to do with allegedly breaking a Canadian lockdown law? Nothing. But it has everything to do with politics. So to stop more media appearances by Pastor Artur, the judge has ordered him to self-denounce after every public statement, so an interview would be ridiculous. The judge also raged at Pastor Artur for going on a speaking tour and warning other churches around North America about the threat to civil liberties. So to stop that, the judge also banned Pastor Artur from leaving his home province of Alberta for the next 18 months. He's banned. There's no legal precedent for any of this. It's completely unconnected to Pastor Arthur's alleged lockdown crimes. It's simply a power-mad judge's revenge on Pastor Artur, a blatant attempt to stop him from speaking freely. This truly is the most absurd, un-Canadian, and clearly unconstitutional court ruling in recent memory. In fact, to find anything like it, you have to look back nearly 90 years to William Aberhart, the former Alberta Premier. Aberhart passed a series of laws together called the Alberta Press Act, which forced newspapers to print the government's rebuttal to their own editorials. That laughably illegal law was taken all the way to the Supreme Court, and in 1938 it was struck down. And the Edmonton Journal, the newspaper that led the charge against the Press Act, they won a special Pulitzer Prize for their efforts. Justice Germain has brought back that illegal law, but applied it just to one citizen. Alas, today the mainstream media are cheering for the censors this time. It'll probably not surprise you that Justice Adam Germain is a failed Liberal politician who, after he lost his election, was appointed to the courts by Jean Chrétien. Obviously, Pastor Artur intends to appeal, and obviously we've got to help him. I just got off the phone with Pastor Arthur's Top Gun lawyer, Sarah Miller. We're relieved that Pastor Artur was kept out of jail. Jason Kenney's prosecutors has demanded a 21-day prison term. But Justice Germain is smart enough to know that actually throwing the pastor back in prison would have made international headlines again, and clearly that's been on the judge's mind. But what he's done here, issuing a political self-denunciation order, is almost as bad. Sarah and the rest of Pastor Arthur's legal team are already working on the appeal. I promise to send you a copy of their appeal the moment she files it in court. Please help us to crowdfund that appeal by going to savearthur.com. I'm glad that Pastor Artur will sleep at home tonight instead of in prison, as the government of Alberta wanted him to. But this judge's communist-style sentence must be fought with everything we have. Please help us crowdfund Pastor Arthur's appeal. Our lawyers are great. They kept him out of jail today, and they're running circles around the government's abusive prosecutors. I promise that we will keep interviewing Pastor Artur on Rebel News And I promise we will never bend the knee to an out-of-control judge who thinks that he can force us or anyone we interview to repeat some government mantra. Never, never. Go to savearthur.com.